Is a thank you from one person worth it? Worth whatever it costs? This was the singular line in my journal entry a while ago. I think I'd watched a movie where the protagonist had to bend her work rules to satisfy an elderly man. And when his thankful smile flooded the screen, I couldn't help but wonder, why does doing good feel so good? And also, at the core of it, does it mean that we're naturally selfish because it makes us feel good? Is anything really pure in and of itself? What is altruism even? Are humans capable of this? And if they are, why is it such a bad thing? I mean, sure, it's defined as behavior that is motivated by a desire to benefit someone above ourselves. Whether it's giving some change to a beggar on the streets or babysitting your neighbor's child at the expense of a girl's night out, or laughing at your friend's joke even though you've heard it 25 times already. According to research done in social neuroscience, altruistic acts were found to be associated with specific patterns in the brain activity. Some of the places found were the limbic region in general, but also found was the insula. So the insula might also be involved because of its role in emotions. Maybe that's why we kind of feel terrible when we think of the consequences of not being kind to someone. Simply put, it can make us feel bad when we don't do good. There's a lot of research being done because they're trying to find the evolutionary purpose of it, because even infants can show this trait, and even animals as well. You know, dolphins and monkeys have been found to show this trait. What's the actual psychology behind altruism? Imagine you're driving a car with the radio on and you're blasting music and living your best life, right? And you abruptly come to a halt because a group of students, while trying to cross, almost ran into your car. And so, what do you think? Do you think A, thank God I didn't hit these kids and hurt them? B, thank God I didn't hit these kids and I'm currently on my way to jail right now? And C, both. Now, while there's a belief that there's always an ulterior motive for doing good and we're inherently selfish, I don't really buy that. I don't know, maybe I'm just needlessly optimistic. I mean, aren't all those reasons valid? And it's also been described as some sort of ego defense mechanism. You know, it's a way to kind of not focus on the anxieties of our own personal lives or the things that are not working, and it just feels good to do good for other people, kind of like a coping or distraction mechanism. I mean, by focusing on others, we wouldn't really need to focus on ourselves. Altruism has its benefits both for self and the society, but I'm not sure if that necessarily takes away from the act. In the example I gave earlier, both reasons can be valid and coexist at the same time. Professor Daniel Batman, a psychologist, actually identified 4 major motives: to benefit oneself, to benefit the other person, to benefit a group of people, and to uphold a certain principle, whether moralistic or religious. But Professor David Wilson argues otherwise, argues that the intention behind altruism isn't all that important. More like the ends justify the means. And he likens this concept to how ants are able to move the hive forward by focusing more on individual efforts. Ants work together to move the group forward as a whole without thinking of the costs to each individual, as long as the hive continues. But I wonder if this could be the same thing for humans. So I'm back to my original question. I don't believe anyone does anything without reason or rhyme, except there's a loss of mental capacity. I think there's always a reason, even if the individual isn't aware of it themselves. And this may or may not have gotten me into trouble. Okay, I wouldn't really call it trouble, but it just kind of makes me make excuses for people, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. Anyway, that's besides the point. Ultimately, there's always a why. Maybe multiple reasons can coexist and they don't necessarily have to dilute one another. Maybe altruism is largely doing good regardless of the reason. Subscribe if you haven't and click on the bell. Let me know what your thoughts are if it's someone that is generally a terrible person, but they somehow find a way to do these good things. I don't know. What do you think?